Hi, welcome to Mr. Dyer's Musings. I'm Mr. Dyer, and today we're going to be building a fire with the friction set. As always, I'd like to thank my wife and family for their unconditional support. I'd like to thank my students and my scouts for always pushing me to learn more and try to be better as a teacher and as an educator. I'd like to thank you, my viewers, and my subscribers. We're past 250 subscribers right now. Thank you so much to those of you who decided to join our channel in this educational journey that we're on. I also like to put a special thank you out there to my patrons on Patreon, because without their help, we wouldn't be doing what's coming up this summer, which I'm really excited about. Right now, we've got scheduled several visits to local historical society, local Ohio historic sites, like the Great Circle Mountain and some forts around here in Ohio. So let's take a look at the friction set. Okay, so what we have here is one of the friction sets, my favorite friction set, and this one dates to about the 1920s and the 1930s. And with that set, we have a yucca stick or a spindle, we have a yucca fireboard, and we have a hard maple handhold. And what I'm going to do is, because yucca is actually the easiest material, like it's the gold standard for making friction fires, I'm going to use this so you can kind of see how it can succeed really easily. And then we're going to move on to a friction fire set that I made my son, which uses just a plain oak bow that I made, and a red cedar fireboard, red cedar spindle, and this is an ash handhold. So before you start any type of friction fire, it's important that you get the tinder ready that you want to use. Now with my scouts, especially in contemporary today, everybody wants to use the paracord or bank line, which is really useful, and I have nothing bad to say about either of those, but there's something that's pretty useful about having just traditional sisal rope or natural fiber rope that you can use. Your basic twine is going to be strong enough, especially on multiple wraps or multiple loops. It'll be just as strong to lash things together as paracord or bank line, especially for most of your uses. But another use for having natural fibered rope is you can use this for tinder. So all you need to do is take your rope, and each of these come undone. They have 3 strands, generally speaking, and what you have left is the twine that combined to make that rope. And what's easiest to do, I found, if you take about 6 inches of it, like so, it's really simple to twist and then pull out, and you got all that nice raw fiber. Now that fiber you can combine, and you can make yourself a bird's nest. So this is what we're going to use to put our ember into light. You can also use bark, dried bark, and other dry materials, dry grasses for your bird's nest. But for most people that's out and about and hiking around, having something already in your pack like this that's ready to go, that has multiple use, is pretty nice. So that's what we're going to be using. So what we have here is our yucca fireboard, and a lot of people on YouTube and various other places, what they suggest is cutting a V-notch. And I found from experience that a V-notch, it can work, but it's not as reliable as a U. And you can see several of my experiences until I get to about here, where I've had my first success making a fire, and then I went to some others. And most recent, this one here. Now I'm going to go ahead and start a new hole so you can see how it works. But basically, you take your pocket knife, and you take your spindle, and you put it roughly where you want it. And I'm going to put it in between those 2 holes so it's less likely to break. And I want just a fraction of the diameter of the spindle that's peeking over. And that just gives me less that I have to cut out, because ultimately what I want to do is I want to cut a V-notch, or it'll start out as a V and then turn it into a U and scoop it out into where the spindle just kind of touches. what that's going to do is as you build up the dust and the friction, that is going to be a natural downspout for the dust, and eventually the ember will catch, because that heat will catch that dust in there and create your ember. So we're going to take our spindle, we're going to put it right about there. I'll take my knife and I'll point to where it is. And yucca is extremely soft, so this is really easy. Harder woods like the cedar board that I'm going to use next is not going to be as simple and as user-friendly as this. I always suggest that people who are learning anything, they try to learn with something that's going to give them the most success as possible. That way they can develop and learn from their mistakes a lot easier. And as they grow in skills, then they can try different things. And it took me about 4 or 5 holes before I really got familiar with how to use the friction fire set. But having the yucca as my first experience was a big help. Okay, so I want enough that's just going to give it a start, and as I push down on this, as you can see, it's really, really soft. It'll go ahead and create that hole. All right, so we have everything ready to go ahead and start putting our hole in here. I just grabbed a broad leaf. Some people like to take a crushed pop can, or take a piece of cardboard, or maybe even a piece of leather that they carry with them to catch the ember and the dust. I'm just going to use this broad leaf because I have it. I'm going to put the fireboard on top of my leaf, because even though at this point we're not really collecting the dust, anything that falls off is going to be useful. Next thing, let's talk about technique. So I'm right-handed. I'm going to use my left leg, and I'm going to put it on the board, and I'm going to put my toe as close to the hole as I can. And I'm going to lift up my left foot just a little bit. Next thing is I have my spindle and I have my bow. Now, some people like the spindle on the inside. I tend to like the spindle on the outside. And this, you just take your spindle, put it in through the string, and then twist it like so, and it locks into place, just like that. And it looks like I need to tighten this up just a little bit. So to do that, all I do is untwist my leather thong, pull it in a little bit, and then I'm just going to wrap it around, because I want it to have a little bit of a snap when I put the spindle in. I want it to have a little bit of resistance. So let's try again. Take your spindle up, bring it around, there we go. Kind of snaps, and it bends the bow just a little bit. That makes sure I have the friction that I need. I'm going to put the spindle on the spot where I want it. I'm going to put my handhold on the spindle, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push my knee forward just a little bit. I'm actually going to end up bracing my wrist against my leg. And I'm going to use my hand in kind of like a claw fashion to hold the handhold, and then I'm just going back and forth. At this point, I'm not going for speed. All I'm really doing is just trying to burn a hole in it a little bit, or push a hole into it, to know where I need to cut that notch. All right, should be good. Got some dust there. I'm going to knock that off. Now that I got that, I'm going to take my knife, and then I can start making progress on my notch. This stuff is good to burn, so you may as well save it if you can.
going back and forth. Okay, so for the bottom here, I'm going to try to create a funnel. Again, it's also going to be a U. And that'll create a collection point for that dust. Now ultimately, this kind of fire is only for survival. You're going to be burning up so many calories to do this. That's why it's always best to have either flint and steel and charred cloth or charred tinder, or a lighter, or matches. This is only for use when you have absolutely no other resort. But if you're a scout leader or a scout, this is a great way to challenge yourself, to learn a skill. It'd be kind of fun. Okay, so now we're getting to it where I'm getting to my circle. All I'm going to do is just clean this out a little bit. And as you see here, it's not going all the way into the center. It's really just about an eighth into the circle, an eighth of an inch. And we can adjust this as we need. It's kind of trial by error, especially as you get deeper and your circle might expand depending on how big your spindle is. But that's good. We have our U, they're there, and we also have our funnel there, so we're ready to go. We're going to take our little shavings, kind of put them in one area. All right, let's see if we can get the dust collecting on film while we do this. Okay, so when you first start, you're just trying to build up friction. The dust will come, but at first it's all about putting downward pressure on it, and it doesn't take very long for it to smoke. But at this point, all you're doing is just trying to build up dust. You want a good amount first. And that dust will come out into that little hole. And as it gets going like what it is right now, you can kind of speed up. Try to use the full length of your bow. Keep your spindle nice and straight. Brace your wrist up against your leg. Let's see what we got. Looks like we got a nice broad amount. Look at that. See? Pretty much guaranteed success. And we have the ember. Now at this point, that ember will actually stay there for a little while. So you don't have to rush. But it's also important to note that, you gotta have your resources ready to go. That way you're not wasting time. But while we have that ember, we're just gonna create a little pocket in our bird's nest. We're gonna drop it in there, like so. We're gonna close it around, and we're gonna blow upward. As you can see, we got the fire going right there, and we're going to move it over here. And there you have it. So we're just going to let that go as is. It's caught our little bird's nest here. We can keep blowing on it and get like a real good fire. Even use your hat. have here is red cedar. Here in Ohio, we don't have yucca, but we do have red cedar, eastern red cedar. So that's what I'm going to use for mine. Another thing that's here in Ohio in the eastern area is cottonwood. Cottonwood's probably going to be the best wood that you can use as long as it's dried out for friction set. But you just got to make sure it's cut and it's dried out and it's ready to go. You always want to make your spindle and your fireboard of the same type of material. That's going to give you the most success. But other than that, we already went ahead and kind of pre-burned this one here. We went ahead and cut the notches, and we're going to see how well this goes. I think I'm going to cut our little divot just a little bit more. A little funnel. Make sure it's well rounded, and I think we're good to go. So same thing as before, we're going to put our board over top something that's going to collect our dust. We got our little bow here. Now something, if you're going to make a bow for yourself, you just want to make sure that your bow is no longer than your arm. So you're going to stick one end from up to your armpit and the other one end up to where your fingers are, and that's going to give you the correct length for your bow. Stick your spindle up, twist it around, and lock it into place. As you can see, it has a little bit of a spring to it. We're going to take our handhold, put it on top. Now first, we're just trying to build up dust. A trick is if you take a little bit of wax and you put that in your handhold, that'll help with trying to stop the friction from up top. And as you can see, my string isn't grasping it. So I'm going to switch over to my bow with the leather. I think the leather works a lot better. Again, we're going to pop that in there, twist it around. Leather grips it really, really well. And my leather broke. Okay, so we have our correct position. Bracing my wrist against my leg. See if we can get some dust. Okay, we're getting lots of good smoke. That's a good sign. Just gotta keep it going. Build up that dust in that chamber. Then we're gonna get speed. As you can see, we got plenty of dust, a lot of heat, but just not quite enough yet. So, hope that helps. It takes a lot more effort with this. If we would have kept going and my spindle didn't come off, as you can see, it kind of broke off. So next time we'll have to go a little bit farther back and trial and error. This just goes to show you how important it is to have that position. But we did have A lot of good dust in there. If we were to try this again, we would keep that dust in the same spot, we'd pile it up, and that's just less dust that we have to make in our next hole.
I hope that was a useful video to you. If you're planning on making your own friction set, just remember some of the hints and tricks that we covered in it. And then if you fail, it's okay. You know, as a teacher, I always tell my students, it's not a problem failing. It's learning from the failures and learning from the mistakes. And chances are you'll actually remember them better failing from an experience instead of just being successful in your first time. And if you did fail like me, just make small adjustments. Keep your dust. That way when you make your next divot in your next hole, you have less dust that you're required to make to get that ember. And remember, as far as your placement goes, go back, leave a little bit hanging over, take your knife, mark it, and then create a divot. It's always better to be a little bit farther back than too forward, because you can always take away wood. You can't add wood. Remember that as well. And if you have those things nailed down, then you'll certainly succeed going out in the woods, creating your own friction set, and in time of disaster, you have that skill to fall back on. If you're wanting to learn this skill and you're wanting something of more of a success, then find a yucca fire set. You can find them sometimes on eBay or Etsy or some other place. You can find them new, but maybe you'll be lucky to find a vintage Boy Scout yucca set to use. If you live in southwestern United States, yucca is going to be your best bet. If you're in the eastern part of the United States, then cedar or even cottonwood, especially cottonwood, is going to be your best bet. Poplar, the next up, but just try to remember, the softer the wood, the better success you're going to have. If you like the video, please click like. Please consider subscribing to the video. Check out our other videos. We have a ton of historical scouting videos, and we also have historical American Civil War videos. Thank you for joining us on this educational journey. If you want to, consider joining us on Patreon and becoming a patron, helping our channel grow in that way. So this summer, when we go visit all those historic sites, you can be part of that experience, and we sincerely appreciate it because it offers us more opportunities together. Have a wonderful week. Give a kiss and hug to your loved ones, and take care.